The Galactic Military Academy stood like a crystal spear against the purple sky of Kepler 442b, its transparent walls reflecting the light of 3 suns. Inside the main training hall, 200 cadets from 47 different species sat in perfect formation, their eyes fixed on the stage where Admiral Zextar was announcing the new instructor assignments. Marcus Chen stood at the back of the hall, his weathered hands clasped behind his back. At 52, he looked older than most humans his age. Gray streaked his black hair, and deep lines mapped the geography of countless battles across his face. His left leg, replaced with military-grade cybernetics after the siege of Proxima, made a barely audible whir when he shifted his weight. Your new combat instructor. Admiral Zextar's 4 arms gestured toward Marcus, is Commander Marcus Chen of the Terran Defense Force. He will be teaching advanced tactical warfare and survival techniques. A ripple of whispers spread through the cadet formation. Marcus could hear fragments of their conversations even across species barriers. The universal translators made sure everyone understood exactly what was being said. A human, hissed Veltar, a 7-foot-tall Draknari whose scales shifted from deep blue to contemptuous yellow. His species had ruled a quarter of the galaxy before humanity even discovered fire. They expect us to learn from a species that barely left their home system 50 years ago? Zixla, a crystalline silicarid whose body chimed softly when she moved, added her own disdain. My people have been perfecting warfare for millennia. What could this primitive possibly teach us? The Catharan twins, Rix and Dex, communicated through rapid bioluminescent flashes across their translucent skin. Their conversation translated to mocking laughter about human fragility and their need for artificial enhancement just to compete with real species. Marcus had heard it all before. In every posting on every world, the same story. Humans were the newcomers, the weak ones, the species that survived through luck rather than skill. He'd stopped caring about the words years ago. What mattered was what happened when the shooting started. Admiral Zextar dismissed the assembly, and the cadets began filing out in their species-segregated groups. Marcus noticed how they moved. Most of them had never seen real combat. Their formations were textbook perfect but rigid. They walked like they owned the galaxy, which in many cases their species did. As Marcus made his way toward the exit, a group of cadets blocked his path. Veltar stood at the center, his massive frame casting a shadow over the human. Around him, 15 of the Academy's most elite students formed a loose circle. These weren't just any cadets. They were the children of generals, admirals, and planetary governors. They'd grown up believing they were destined to lead the galaxy's armies. Commander Chen. Veltar's voice carried the particular arrogance that came from being born into power. We've been reviewing your service record. Marcus said nothing, his gray eyes studying each of them in turn. He cataloged their stances, their weapons positioning, the way they held themselves. Textbook warriors, every one of them. Impressive reading, continued Zixla, her crystalline form refracting the hall's light into rainbow patterns. If you believe human propaganda, 30 years of service, dozens of commendations, veteran of 7 major campaigns. The Proxima siege, added Rix, his bioluminescent spots pulsing in rhythm with his twins. Where you supposedly held off an entire hegemony assault fleet with just a single battalion. Fairy tales, Dex finished, his lights flashing in sync. Humans love their fairy tales. A few other cadets had stopped to watch. Marcus could see them forming a wider circle, sensing drama. This was the moment that would define his entire tenure at the Academy. In institutions like this, respect wasn't given. It was earned or taken. You think we're lying? Marcus asked quietly. His voice carried no anger, no defensiveness. Just curiosity. I think. Veltar stepped closer, using his height advantage to loom over the human. That humans inflate their achievements to compensate for their obvious inadequacies. Your species couldn't even defend your own homeworld without help from the Alliance. You need machines to match what we do naturally, added another cadet, a Zenthari whose forearms were crossed in obvious dismissal. Cybernetic legs, enhanced reflexes, chemical stimulants. You're more machine than soldier. Marcus looked down at his artificial leg, then back up at the alien cadets. You think this makes me weaker? I think, Veltar's scales shifted to aggressive red, that when the real fighting starts, you'll break like all humans do. Your species survived this long through politics and alliances, not strength. The circle of watching cadets had grown larger. Word was spreading through the academy that the new human instructor was being challenged. Marcus could see faculty members beginning to notice, but none of them intervened. This was how things worked in military academies across the galaxy. Hierarchies were established through confrontation. "Here's what's going to happen," Veltar announced loud enough for everyone to hear. "Tomorrow we start your little training program, and we're going to show everyone exactly how much a human veteran is really worth." "Looking forward to it," Marcus replied simply. The alien cadets dispersed, clearly satisfied that they'd established their dominance. Marcus watched them go, noting the swagger in their walks, the casual arrogance in their postures. They moved like predators who'd never met bigger predators. As the hall emptied, Marcus remained standing in the same spot. His mind was already working, planning, preparing. These weren't bad soldiers. Their techniques were solid, their conditioning excellent. But they'd made the classic mistake that every species made when they first encountered humans in combat. They thought human weaknesses were what made humans weak. Admiral Zextar approached, his forearms moving in the complex gesture that indicated concern among his species. "Commander Chen, I apologize for that display. These cadets come from influential families, but that doesn't excuse—" "No apology necessary, Admiral," Marcus interrupted gently. "They're not wrong about human limitations. We are weaker, slower, more fragile than most species." The Admiral's compound eyes showed confusion. "Then why do you seem pleased?" Marcus smiled, and for just a moment something dangerous flickered behind his gray eyes. "Because tomorrow they're going to learn what humans do with those limitations." He walked away, his cybernetic leg marking time with mechanical precision against the academy's polished floor. The training ground stretched across 5 square kilometers of varied terrain: urban ruins, dense forest, open plains, and rocky highlands. Dawn on Kepler 442b meant the rise of the first sun, casting long shadows across the artificial landscape that the Academy used to simulate combat conditions from 100 different worlds. Marcus stood at the edge of the starting zone, checking his equipment one final time. Standard military fatigues, basic armor, a single sidearm, and a combat knife. No enhanced gear, no special equipment, just what any baseline human soldier might carry into battle. The cadets arrived in formation, their equipment gleaming under the morning light. Each wore armor worth more than most planets' annual military budgets. Their weapons were masterwork pieces, crafted by the finest military contractors in the galaxy. Veltar's personal rifle alone could punch through starship hull plating. "Attention!" Admiral Zextar's voice boomed across the training ground. Behind him stood the Academy's senior faculty, representatives from dozens of species, all here to observe the new human instructor's first lesson. The cadets snapped to perfect attention. Marcus noticed how they kept glancing at him, their expressions ranging from barely concealed contempt to outright amusement. Word of yesterday's confrontation had spread throughout the Academy. Everyone knew what this was really about. "Today's exercise," the Admiral announced, "is a combat simulation. The scenario is simple. Insurgent forces have taken control of a strategic facility. Your mission is to neutralize the threat and secure the objective." A holographic display materialized above the training ground, showing the layout in detail. The facility sat at the center of the terrain, protected by natural choke points and elevated positions. Any approach would be difficult, any assault costly. "You will be divided into 2 teams, Admiral Zextar continued. "Team Alpha consists of 15 cadets led by Cadet Veltar. Team Beta is Commander Chen, operating alone." Murmurs rippled through the watching faculty. Several alien instructors exchanged glances that clearly said this was either inspired or insane. Veltar's scales flashed bright orange, the Draknari equivalent of laughter. "Admiral, surely you don't expect us to take this seriously. 1 human against 15 trained warriors?" "The exercise parameters are set," the Admiral replied firmly. "Team Alpha, you will assault the facility and attempt to secure the objective. Commander Chen, you will defend it. The simulation uses non-lethal rounds and neural feedback. You'll feel pain but suffer no permanent damage." Marcus walked toward the facility without a word. Behind him, he could hear the cadets already planning their assault. They spoke loudly, confident that numbers and superior equipment would make this a quick victory. The facility was a 3-story structure with multiple entry points and good sight lines. Marcus had defended similar positions before. though usually with a full platoon and heavy weapon support. Today, he had 30 minutes to prepare before the exercise began. He moved through the building methodically, his mind calculating angles, timing, resources. The building's layout offered several advantages if used correctly. More importantly, the cadets' equipment and training would work against them in an environment like this. Simulation begins in 60 seconds, the Admiral's voice echoed across the training ground. Marcus settled into position on the second floor, his rifle trained on the main approach. Through his scope, he could see the cadets forming up at the edge of the exercise area. Veltar was gesturing dramatically, clearly giving what he thought was an inspiring speech. Begin simulation. The assault came exactly as Marcus had expected, textbook perfect and completely predictable. The cadets advanced in formation, using their superior firepower to suppress the building, while assault teams moved to flank from multiple directions. Marcus let them get close. Very close. The first cadet through the eastern entrance was Zixla, her crystalline form refracting light as she moved. Her crystal structure made her naturally resilient to most forms of attack, and her combat techniques were flawless. She cleared the room with professional efficiency, her weapon tracking smoothly as she advanced. She never saw the tripwire, the improvised explosive, made from training materials Marcus had found in the building, sent her tumbling backward with a feedback shock that temporarily scrambled her nervous system. Not enough to cause real damage, but enough to remove her from the exercise. The Kithrin twins came through the western entrance together, their bioluminescent communication allowing them to coordinate with inhuman precision. They moved like dancers, anticipating each other's actions perfectly. Marcus had anticipated that too. The falling beam, loosened during his preparation time, caught them both as they passed underneath. Another 2 casualties taken out by environmental hazards rather than direct combat. What's happening down there? Veltar's voice crackled over the comm system. Contact with Defender, came the response. Zixla and the twins are down. Impossible. He's one human with basic equipment. Marcus smiled grimly as he relocated to a new position. Through the building's windows, he could see the remaining cadets regrouping. They were still thinking like traditional warriors. Superior force against inferior force. Technology against primitiveness. They weren't thinking like humans. The next assault came from 3 directions simultaneously. Better coordination, more aggressive tactics. The cadets had adapted to the presence of traps and were advancing more carefully. Marcus waited until they were committed to their approach, then triggered the building's fire suppression system. Water and foam flooded the ground floor, turning the polished floors into a skating rink. Alien feet, designed for a dozen different terrains, couldn't find purchase on the slippery surface. He picked off 4 more cadets as they struggled to maintain their footing. This is ridiculous. Veltar's voice carried clearly across the battlefield. He's not fighting honorably. Marcus keyed his comm unit. Define honor, face-to-face combat. Warrior against warrior. Not hiding like a coward and using tricks. Interesting philosophy, Marcus replied, dropping a smoke grenade down the main stairwell. Tell me, when you're dead, does it matter if you died honorably? 8 cadets remained. Marcus could hear them regrouping outside, their voices carried by the morning wind. They were frustrated, angry, and starting to make mistakes. The next assault abandoned all pretense of tactical sophistication. They came straight up the middle, relying on overwhelming firepower to suppress any resistance. It was exactly what Marcus had been waiting for. He'd spent his preparation time weakening the floor supports in the main corridor. When 8 heavily armored aliens charged up the stairs together, the structure couldn't handle the concentrated weight. They crashed through to the ground floor in a tangle of debris and confused alien curses. Exercise terminated, Admiral Zextar's voice announced. All Team Alpha members eliminated. Silence fell over the training ground. Marcus walked out of the building, his equipment exactly as clean as when he'd entered. He hadn't fired a single shot. The cadets extracted themselves from the rubble, their pride more damaged than their bodies. Veltar's scales had shifted from aggressive red to the deep purple that indicated profound embarrassment among his species. How? Zixla asked, her crystalline structure dim with confusion. You had inferior equipment, no support, no numerical advantage. Marcus looked at the assembled cadets, then at the watching faculty. You fought the battle you wanted to fight, not the battle that was actually happening. Explain, Admiral Zextar commanded. You assumed that superior technology and numbers guaranteed victory. You fought with honor and followed proper tactical doctrine. You did everything right according to your training. Marcus gestured toward the wrecked facility. But you forgot something important. Humans don't fight fair. We fight to win. The watching faculty exchanged glances. Several of them looked thoughtful, others concerned. Tomorrow, Marcus announced, we'll try something different. The Academy's combat simulation chamber could recreate any environment in the known galaxy. Today, it showed a barren asteroid field with scattered mining installations, the kind of place where pirates like to hide and honest merchants feared to travel. Marcus stood before the assembled cadets, his expression serious. Word of yesterday's exercise had spread through the entire academy. These young aliens, who had never questioned their own superiority, were beginning to understand that they might have something to learn. Yesterday was about assumptions, Marcus began. Today is about adaptation. Veltar, his pride still stinging from the previous day's defeat, raised one of his forearms. Commander, with respect, yesterday's exercise proved nothing. You used the environment against us, but that was only possible because you had time to prepare. Fair point, Marcus nodded. So today, no preparation time. The scenario is a hostage rescue. Civilians are being held in that mining station by an unknown number of hostiles. Your job is to get them out alive. The holographic display showed the mining station in detail, a complex structure built into a large asteroid, with multiple levels, limited access points, and civilians scattered throughout. Red dots indicated hostile positions, though their exact numbers and capabilities were unknown. The twist, Marcus continued, is that you'll be working with me, not against me. We're a team. Your job is to follow my lead and learn. Zixla's crystalline form chimed softly as she processed this information. You want us to follow human tactics? I want you to survive, Marcus replied simply. In real combat, survival matters more than honor, pride, or following proper doctrine. The cadets exchanged glances. This wasn't what they'd expected from their elite military education. They'd been taught that superior firepower, advanced technology, and overwhelming force were the keys to victory. Simulation begins in 30 seconds, the Admiral's voice announced from the observation deck. Marcus turned to address the cadets directly. First rule of human combat doctrine: forget everything you know about fair fighting. The enemy wants to kill you and everyone you're trying to protect. Your job is to make sure that doesn't happen. Begin simulation. The asteroid field materialized around them. The mining station loomed ahead, its communications array damaged and no response to hailing attempts. Scanner readings showed life signs throughout the structure, but couldn't distinguish between hostiles and civilians. Standard protocol, Veltar announced, is to secure the perimeter, establish communications, and assault with overwhelming force. Standard protocol, Marcus interrupted, gets hostages killed. We do this differently. He led them toward an abandoned mining platform a kilometer away from the target station. The cadets followed reluctantly, clearly uncomfortable with approaching the objective indirectly. Rix, Dex, Marcus called to the Kytheran twins. Your bioluminescent communication doesn't register on most sensor arrays, correct? Correct, Dex replied, his skin flashing in confusion. But what does that have to do with everything? You're going to be our scouts. Marcus turned to Zixla. Your crystalline structure can refract sensor beams, making you nearly invisible to electronic detection. Yes, but no buts. Veltar, your species has natural camouflage capabilities when your scales go dormant, right? Well, yes, but Draknari warriors don't hide from... Today they do. Marcus's voice carried absolute authority. Because today we save lives instead of counting coup. The next 20 minutes were unlike anything the cadets had experienced in their military education. Marcus divided them into small teams, each with a specific mission that utilized their species' natural abilities, rather than their advanced equipment. The twins slipped through the asteroid field like ghosts, their natural agility allowing them to navigate areas that would challenge most species. Their bioluminescent flashes provided real-time intelligence about hostile positions and civilian locations. Zixla used her light-bending properties to approach the station's sensor arrays undetected. Instead of destroying them, she carefully modified their sensitivity, creating blind spots that the assault teams could exploit. Veltar, his pride wrestling with practicality, eventually allowed his scales to go dormant. The natural camouflage made him nearly invisible against the asteroid's rocky surface, as he positioned himself to cover the primary escape routes. The assault itself was nothing like the cadets had been taught. Instead of overwhelming force, Marcus used precision. Instead of direct confrontation, he used misdirection. Small teams hit multiple targets simultaneously, creating confusion among the hostiles while civilian evacuation teams moved through the sensor blind spots Zixela had created. "Contact front," one of the cadets shouted as they encountered their first hostile force. "Don't engage," Marcus ordered. "Mark and bypass." "Bypass?" Veltar's voice carried disbelief. "We outnumber them 3-1, and while we're fighting them, their friends are executing hostages. Move around them." It went against every instinct the cadets had. They'd been trained to engage threats immediately, to use their superior capabilities to overwhelm opposition. Marcus was asking them to ignore enemies and focus on the mission. The breakthrough came when they reached the station's central hub. 12 hostiles had barricaded themselves in with 8 civilians, their weapons trained on the helpless prisoners. Standard assault doctrine would have required a frontal attack with acceptable civilian casualties. Marcus had a different idea. "Zixela, can you create a light burst bright enough to temporarily blind them?" "Yes, but it will reveal my position." "Do it on my mark. Twins, when she flashes, you move." "Veltar, you're with me on the direct assault, but not until they're distracted." "This is insane," muttered one of the other cadets. "We're coordinating our entire assault around tricks and misdirection. We're coordinating our assault around staying alive and completing the mission." Marcus corrected. The assault lasted 18 seconds. Zixela's light burst blinded the hostiles completely. The twins moved like liquid mercury, their natural agility allowing them to navigate the complex environment and neutralize threats before they could recover. Veltar, following Marcus's lead, used his natural strength and speed for precision strikes rather than overwhelming force. 8 civilians rescued. 0 casualties. 12 hostiles neutralized. Simulation complete. Mission successful. The asteroid field faded away, leaving the cadets standing in the simulation chamber. They looked at each other with a mixture of confusion and dawning understanding. "Time to completion," Admiral Zextar announced. 18 minutes, 37 seconds. Civilian casualties, 0. Team casualties, 0. Veltar's scales shifted to the deep blue that indicated thoughtfulness. "Commander, the Academy's record for this simulation is 43 minutes with acceptable civilian losses." "Acceptable losses," Marcus repeated. "Tell me, Veltar, which of these civilians would have been acceptable to lose?" The big alien looked at the holographic display showing the 8 rescued hostages, families, workers, children. His scales darkened further. "None of them," he said quietly. "Exactly. That's the difference between fighting for glory and fighting for people." Zixela's crystalline form was glowing softly, indicating intense thought. "You used our natural abilities, but not the way we were taught. Your instructors taught you to maximize your advantages in direct combat. I taught you to use your advantages to avoid combat when possible." "But we're warriors," protested Dex, his bioluminescent spots flashing rapidly. "We're supposed to fight. Warriors protect people," Marcus replied. "Everything else is just details." The cadets fell silent. For the first time since arriving at the Academy, they were questioning not just their tactics, but their fundamental understanding of what it meant to be soldiers. "Tomorrow," Marcus announced, "we'll learn about the hardest part of being human in combat." "Which is?" asked Veltar, knowing when not to fight at all. The briefing room was smaller today, more intimate. Marcus had requested it specifically. What he was about to teach couldn't be learned in a formal lecture hall. The 15 cadets sat in a circle, their usual rigid formation abandoned for something that felt almost casual. On the holographic display, images cycled slowly. Battle scenes from across the galaxy. Some showed glorious victories. Aliens in perfect formation receiving surrender from defeated enemies. Others showed something different. Refugees fleeing burning cities, children crying over fallen parents. The aftermath of wars that had consumed entire civilizations. "Today we talk about the cost of fighting," Marcus began. "Not resources, not strategic objectives, not acceptable losses. The real cost." Veltar's scales rippled with confusion. "Commander, we've studied military economics extensively. Resource allocation, logistical requirements, casualty projections. That's not what I mean." Marcus touched a control. and the display showed a single image: a human soldier kneeling in the ruins of a city, cradling something too small to be anything but a child. The room went silent. "This is Corporal Sarah Martinez, 3rd Battalion Terran Defense Force, Proxima Campaign, Day 47. She just pulled this little girl from the rubble of a civilian shelter that got hit during the battle." Marcus paused, his eyes distant. The girl's name was Anna. She was 6 years old. She loved to draw pictures of spaceships. "Commander." Zixla's voice was softer than usual, her crystalline form dimming with something that might have been empathy. "Why are you telling us this?" "Because Anna is why we fight. And she's also why we sometimes choose not to fight." The display changed again, showing tactical maps from the Proxima siege. Red and blue markers indicated unit positions, movement vectors, strategic objectives. It looked like any other military briefing. Day 48 of the siege. My battalion was holding the northern district. Intelligence indicated that hegemony forces were massing for a major assault on our position. Standard doctrine called for immediate artillery bombardment of their staging areas. Veltar leaned forward, interested despite himself. "Sound tactics. Disrupt their assembly before they can attack." Except their staging areas were in residential districts. Civilian shelters, schools, hospitals. The cadets exchanged glances. This wasn't the kind of tactical scenario they'd studied at the academy. "So what did you do?" asked Rix, his bioluminescent pattern subdued. "I refused the bombardment order." The silence that followed was profound. In the rigid military hierarchies most of these aliens came from, refusing orders was unthinkable. "You disobeyed a direct command?" Dex's lights flickered with shock. "I did. My commanding officer was furious. The other battalion commanders thought I'd lost my nerve. Even my own troops questioned the decision." Marcus touched another control. The display showed the same tactical map, but now it included civilian population data overlaid on the military positions. "See these numbers? 47,000 civilians in the target zones. Men, women, children, elderly. People like Anna." "But the tactical situation," protested a Zenthari cadet. "Surely the military objective took precedence." "Did it?" Marcus asked quietly. "Let me show you what happened next." The display changed again, showing the actual battle sequence. Instead of the expected bombardment, it showed something different. Small unit actions, precision strikes, carefully coordinated movements that avoided civilian areas entirely. "Without the artillery support, how did you hold your position?" Veltar asked. "We didn't hold it. We gave ground, fell back to secondary positions, lost equipment, lost tactical advantage, took heavier casualties than we should have." "Then you failed," concluded the Zenthari cadet. "Did I?" The display showed the final tactical map. "We held the city. The siege broke on day 51. The hegemony withdrew. But at what cost?" Zixla asked. 237 military casualties instead of the projected 60 to 80. Significant equipment losses, 3 days of additional fighting. The cadets nodded. By any military metric, it had been an inefficient operation. And 47,000 civilians lived to see their families again. The room fell silent again. Marcus could see them processing this, trying to reconcile it with everything they'd been taught about military efficiency and acceptable costs. "Commander," Veltar said slowly, "your species' military records show similar patterns in other campaigns. Humans consistently choose tactics that result in higher military casualties to reduce civilian losses. From a strategic standpoint, this seems inefficient." "Inefficient," Marcus repeated. "Yes, from a purely military standpoint, it's incredibly inefficient." "Then why do it?" Marcus stood up and walked to the display, his cybernetic leg making its subtle mechanical sound. "Because the moment we start calculating the value of innocent lives against military objectives, we stop being soldiers and start being something else." "What?" asked Rick's monsters. The word hung in the air like a physical thing. These alien cadets, raised in cultures that prized military efficiency and strategic thinking, had never considered that there might be lines that shouldn't be crossed, even in war. "But surely," Dex protested, "there are situations where civilian casualties are unavoidable, where the greater good requires difficult choices." "There are," Marcus agreed. "And humans struggle with those choices every day. The difference is that we struggle. We don't accept them as inevitable." He touched the display controls again. This time it showed personnel files. Human soldiers, their service records, their psychological evaluations. post-combat stress disorder, survivor guilt, depression, anxiety. Humans who serve in combat zones suffer mental health issues at rates much higher than most species. "Because you're weaker," muttered one of the cadets, then immediately looked ashamed of the comment. "Because we care," Marcus corrected gently. "Because every civilian death, every destroyed home, every child left orphaned weighs on us. Because we never stop being human. Even in war." Zixla's crystalline form was pulsing slowly with thought. "But this emotional response, doesn't it compromise your effectiveness as soldiers?" "Does it?" Marcus asked. "Let me show you something else." The display changed to show comparative statistics, human military units versus alien forces in similar scenarios. The numbers were surprising: mission success rates, civilian casualty rates, long-term stability in occupied territories, post-conflict reconstruction effectiveness. Veltar studied the data, his scales shifting through several colors as he processed the information. Human forces consistently perform better in all these categories. "Why do you think that is?" The big alien was quiet for a long moment. Because the civilians trust you? Because they know we see them as people, not as obstacles or acceptable losses. Marcus sat back down, facing the circle of cadets. "This is the hardest lesson humans learn in combat. Sometimes the most important victory is the one you don't achieve through force, Kanor." "Can you give us an example?" asked a small Catherian cadet who had rarely spoken before. Kepler 196F, Rebellion against Colonial Government. Standard response would have been orbital bombardment, then ground assault to mop up survivors. What did the humans do instead? "We talked to them, spent 6 months in negotiations, found out the colonial government was corrupt, stealing resources meant for infrastructure development. We arrested the criminals and helped establish legitimate leadership. No battle at all? No battle at all. No casualties. No destroyed cities. No orphaned children." The cadets sat in contemplative silence. Everything they'd learned about military glory, about the honor of combat, about proving strength through victory, was being challenged by concepts they'd never considered. "Commander," Veltar said finally, "are you saying that humans are better soldiers because you try to avoid fighting?" Marcus smiled, and for the first time since they'd met him, it reached his eyes. "I'm saying that humans are better soldiers because we never forget why we fight in the first place." The emergency klaxon echoed through the academy corridors at 0347 local time. Marcus was already awake, a habit ingrained by 30 years of military service. By the time the cadets stumbled from their dormitories, he was fully dressed and checking his equipment. "This is not a drill." Admiral Zextar's voice boomed through the announcement system. "All personnel to emergency stations." Code red, "This is not a drill." In the main assembly hall, chaos reigned. Hundreds of cadets from dozens of species milled about in confusion, their sleep-disrupted minds struggling to process what was happening. Faculty members rushed between groups trying to establish order. Marcus found his 15 cadets clustered together near the main entrance. Veltar's scales were shifting rapidly between colors, indicating high stress. The Catherian twins were flashing so rapidly their bioluminescence looked almost solid. Even Zixla's normally steady crystalline glow was flickering erratically. "Commander," Veltar called out as Marcus approached. "What's happening?" "No one will tell us anything." Before Marcus could answer, Admiral Zextar took the stage. His forearms moved in the complex gestures that indicated extreme urgency among his species. "At 0315 hours, we received a distress signal from the civilian transport Harmony's Dream. The ship suffered critical system failures while passing through the Kepler 4A42 system. They're currently stranded in a decaying orbit around the system's third moon." The holographic display above the stage showed the transport ship, a massive civilian vessel designed to carry thousands of passengers on intersystem routes. Warning indicators flashed red across its hull diagram. The ship is carrying 4,700 passengers, families, children, elderly. Their life support systems are failing, and they have perhaps 6 hours before complete atmospheric failure. A murmur ran through the assembled cadets. This wasn't a training exercise or a theoretical scenario. Real people were going to die if nothing was done. The nearest military vessels are 16 hours away. By the time they arrive, everyone aboard that ship will be dead. "What about the Academy's ships?" called out an instructor. "We have 3 training vessels capable of interplanetary flight. Combined, They can evacuate perhaps 800 people. That leaves nearly 4,000 with no hope of rescue. The reality of the situation settled over the assembly like a weight. 4,000 people were going to die, and there was nothing anyone could do about it. Marcus stepped forward. "Admiral, permission to speak." "Granted, Commander. What's the nature of the system failures on the transport?" Admiral Zextar consulted his datapad. "Power core instability leading to cascade failures across all ship systems. Navigation, life support, structural integrity, everything is failing. But the ship itself is intact? For now. The engineers estimate 6 hours before total system collapse." Marcus turned to address his cadets. "Field trip. Anyone interested in a real rescue mission?" Veltar's scales went through 3 different color changes before settling on confused blue. "Commander, you heard the Admiral. The situation is hopeless. There's no way to save them." "There's no way to save them using standard procedures," Marcus corrected. "Humans specialize in non-standard procedures." Admiral Zextar descended from the stage, his expression grave. "Commander, I appreciate your optimism, but this isn't a training exercise. We cannot risk Academy personnel on a mission with no chance of success." "Who said there was no chance of success?" The Admiral's compound eyes showed frustration. "Basic mathematics, Commander. 3 ships, 800 rescue capacity, 4,700 passengers. The numbers don't work." "You're thinking like a politician," Marcus replied. "Start thinking like an engineer." Before the Admiral could respond, Marcus was addressing his cadets directly. "What do we know about the transport's design?" Zixla's crystalline form brightened as she accessed her memory files. "Standard civilian configuration. Modular construction with separate atmospheric zones. Redundant life support systems, though apparently not redundant enough." "Good. Veltar, what do you know about Dreknari environmental suits?" "They're designed for extended void operations. High species can survive in hostile environments for days with proper equipment." "Rix, Dex, how long can your species survive in reduced atmosphere?" "Indefinitely," Dex replied, his bioluminescent patterns indicating confusion. "Our biology is adapted for low oxygen environments." Marcus turned back to Admiral Zextar. "Admiral, I need access to the Academy's engineering workshops. A complete manifest of available equipment, and authorization to commandeer anything necessary for this mission." "Commander, even if you could somehow increase the rescue capacity, the power core failure makes any approach to the ship extremely dangerous. Which is why we're not going to approach the ship." The Admiral's forearms moved in a gesture of complete bewilderment. "Then how exactly do you propose to rescue the passengers?" Marcus smiled, and several of the cadets recognized the expression from their training exercises. It was the look he got when he was about to do something that defied conventional logic. "We're going to bring them to us." The next 4 hours were controlled chaos. Marcus divided his cadets into teams, each with a specific mission that seemed impossible until they started working together. Veltar led a team to the Academy's shuttle bay, where they began modifying the training vessel's cargo holds. Instead of trying to increase passenger capacity within the ship's existing life support systems, they stripped out everything non-essential and installed independent atmospheric processors. Zixla and the twins worked in the engineering workshops, fabricating specialized equipment that didn't exist in any standard military manual. Emergency shelters that could house 50 people each in hard vacuum. Portable power units that could maintain life support for hours. Other cadets worked on, perhaps the most audacious part of the plan, converting the Academy's defensive shield generators into massive containment fields that could hold atmosphere in open space. "This is insane," muttered one of the Zenthari instructors as he watched the controlled chaos. "They're trying to build a temporary space station using training equipment and spare parts." Admiral Zextar stood beside him, watching Marcus coordinate the operation with the efficiency of someone who had done impossible things before. "Commander Chen, surely you realize that even if this works, the transport passengers won't survive the transfer process. They will if we bring the transfer process to them." The plan that emerged over the next hour defied every principle of conventional space rescue. Instead of evacuating passengers to the rescue ships, Marcus intended to create a series of temporary habitable zones in space itself, connected by emergency tunnels and powered by portable fusion units. "It's like building a city in vacuum," Veltar observed, his scales showing the deep orange that indicated either intense admiration or complete madness. "Exactly," Marcus replied. A temporary city that can house everyone until proper rescue ships arrive. And if the containment fields fail, then we all die together. But if we do nothing, they die alone. With 2 hours remaining before the transport's final systems failed, the makeshift rescue fleet launched from the academy. 3 modified training vessels, carrying not just traditional rescue equipment but the components for the most ambitious engineering project any of them had ever attempted. The OE. Transport ship Harmony's Dream hung in space like a dying giant, its hull dark except for the emergency beacons that still functioned. Inside, 4,700 people waited for death. They were about to learn that humans had other ideas. All teams, this is Marcus. Remember, we're not just rescuing these people. We're showing them what's possible when different species work together. And if we fail, asked Veltar over the comm, then we fail doing something worth dying for. The alien cadets who had once mocked human weakness now found themselves following a human into the most dangerous rescue mission any of them could imagine. And for the first time in their lives, they understood what courage really meant. Space around the dying transport ship. Harmony's Dream had been transformed into something unprecedented in galactic history. What the cadets were building shouldn't have been possible with their equipment, shouldn't have worked with their limited time, and definitely shouldn't have been attempted by a handful of military academy students. But it was working. Containment field Alpha is stable. Zixla reported from her position at the primary generator array. Her crystalline form was glowing brightly as she channeled energy through her body to fine-tune the field harmonics. Atmospheric pressure holding at standard levels. The first emergency habitat was now complete, a bubble of breathable atmosphere held in place by overlapping containment fields. Large enough to house 300 people, it hung in space like a soap bubble, defying physics through sheer audacity and alien ingenuity. Habitat construction team to emergency shelter beta. Marcus's voice crackled over the comm. Veltar, how's your progress? The big Draknari was working in hard vacuum, his environmental suit allowing him to function where others couldn't. His natural strength made him ideal for handling the heavy structural components that would anchor the habitats to each other. Structural framework complete, Veltar reported. Ready for atmosphere injection on your mark. Rixdeck's status on the transit tunnels? The Kytheran twins were building the connections between habitats, enclosed pathways that would allow people to move safely through vacuum from one emergency shelter to another. Their natural agility let them work in 3-dimensional space with an ease that amazed even Marcus. Transit tunnel network is 70% complete. Rix flashed in reply. 15 more minutes and we'll have a fully connected system. On the tactical display, the rescue operation looked like nothing anyone had ever seen before. Instead of a traditional evacuation, they were constructing a temporary space city piece by piece, each component designed to keep hundreds of people alive until proper rescue ships could arrive. Transport ship. This is Commander Chen. We're ready to begin passenger transfer. The reply came back immediately, the transport captain's voice tight with disbelief. Commander, our sensors are showing. I'm not sure what they're showing. What exactly have you built out there? Emergency accommodation? We're going to move your passengers to temporary habitats while we work on stabilizing your ship's systems. Commander, with respect, that's impossible. You can't maintain atmospheric pressure in open space without— Sir, we're doing it right now. Check your sensors again. A long pause. Dear gods, you actually are. How is this possible? Marcus looked around at his cadets working with focused determination to complete their impossible project. Teamwork. The passenger transfer began with the most vulnerable, children, elderly, and injured. Small shuttles moved back and forth between the transport and the emergency habitats, each trip carrying people who had given up hope of survival. This is unprecedented. Admiral Zextar's voice came over the command channel. Commander, Fleet Headquarters is requesting a full explanation of your methods. They're having trouble believing our status reports. Tell them we'll write up the technical details later, Marcus replied, watching another shuttle load with passengers. Right now we're busy saving lives. The first shuttle arrived at Habitat Alpha, its passengers staring through the viewports at the impossible sight that greeted them. A bubble of air and warmth floating in the deadly vacuum of space, held together by alien technology and human stubbornness. Welcome to our temporary city, Marcus announced over the Habitat's communication system. I know this looks unusual, but you're safe here. We're going to get everyone off that ship and keep you comfortable until proper rescue ships arrive. Among the passengers were families from a dozen different species. Human children pressed against the viewing panels, watching alien cadets work in hard vacuum to expand their temporary home. Elderly Centaurians marveled at the engineering feat that had saved their lives. Young Altarians played games while their parents tried to process the impossibility of their rescue. Habitat Beta is complete and pressurized, Veltar reported. Ready for the next group. Outstanding. Zixla, how are the power levels? Holding steady. These portable fusion units are more efficient than I calculated. We should have enough power for at least 12 hours. That was cutting it close, but Marcus knew the rescue fleet would arrive within 10 hours. If his math was right, they'd make it with time to spare. If his math was wrong, everyone would die together. Commander, came a new voice over the comm, young, uncertain, speaking heavily accented standard. This is passenger Elena Vasquez, age 16. I wanted to thank you. Marcus paused in his coordination duties. You don't need to thank us, Elena. We're just doing our job. No, sir. You don't understand. My little brother Miguel, he's only 6 years old. He was so scared on the ship when the lights went out and the air got thin. But now he's playing with the other kids in the habitat and he's laughing again. Marcus felt something tight in his chest. Through the habitat's viewing panel, he could see the little boy Elena was talking about. A small human child playing zero-gravity tag with alien kids, all of them giggling as they bounced gently off the habitat's walls. Miguel wants to know if he can be a space hero like you when he grows up. Before Marcus could answer, Veltar's voice cut in. Tell him he already is a space hero. Anyone brave enough to laugh after what he's been through has the right spirit. Other voices joined in from around the rescue operation. Zixla talking about how courage came in many forms. The twins explaining that real heroes were the people who helped each other. Other cadets sharing their own thoughts about what made someone worthy of admiration. These alien students, who had once dismissed humans as weak and primitive, were now speaking like the teachers Marcus had always hoped they could become. Transport captain to rescue team, the ship's commander called out. I have an update on our engineering situation. My team has managed to stabilize the power core using some of your technical suggestions. We're no longer in immediate danger of total system failure. Outstanding news, Marcus replied. But we're going to continue the evacuation anyway. No point in taking risks. Agreed. Commander, I have to ask, where did you learn to do this kind of emergency engineering? Marcus looked around at the impossible space city his cadets had built, at the hundreds of lives they'd saved through sheer determination and creative thinking. From some very good teachers, he said. As the hours passed, more passengers were transferred to the growing network of emergency habitats. The temporary space city expanded, accommodated everyone, and proved that sometimes the impossible was just another word for difficult. When the proper rescue ships finally arrived, they found not a desperate evacuation, but an orderly relocation operation. The passengers were safe, comfortable, and in remarkably good spirits considering their ordeal. Fleet Command to Academy Rescue Team, came the official communication. We are prepared to take over evacuation operations. Acknowledged Fleet Command. All passengers are secure and ready for transfer to your vessels. Commander Chen, we're going to need a full technical briefing on your methods, what you've accomplished here. It's being studied by engineering teams across the fleet. Marcus smiled as he watched the last of the passengers board the rescue ships. Miguel, the 6-year-old boy, waved goodbye through a viewport, his face bright with the joy of someone who had seen impossible things become possible. The technical details will be in my report, Marcus said, but the important part is simple. Humans work best when we're working together. Together with whom? Marcus looked around at his alien cadets, tired but proud of what they'd accomplished. With everyone. 3 months after the Harmony's dream rescue, the Galactic Military Academy had become a different place. Word of the impossible rescue operation had spread throughout the known galaxy, and military theorists from dozens of species were still trying to understand how Academy cadets had accomplished something that seasoned engineering corps claimed was theoretically impossible. Marcus stood in the same briefing room where he'd first been introduced to his skeptical students. The holographic display now showed commendation letters from the Galactic Council, technical analysis reports from various military academies, and most importantly, thank you messages from the families they'd saved. Today marks the end of your advanced tactical training, he announced to the assembled cadets. Tomorrow, you'll be graduating and receiving your first military assignments. The 15 aliens who had once mocked him now sat with the quiet confidence of soldiers who had tested themselves against impossible odds and emerged victorious. Veltar's scales showed the deep blue of profound respect. Zixla's crystalline form glowed with steady contentment. The Kytheran twins' bioluminescent patterns moved in perfect harmony. Before you leave, Marcus continued, I want each of you to understand something important. The rescue operation we performed wasn't successful because of superior technology or overwhelming force. It worked because you learned to think like humans. What does that mean exactly? Asked Veltar. His tone held none of the arrogance that had characterized their first meeting. It means you stopped accepting limitations as absolute. You started looking for solutions instead of reasons why things couldn't be done. Marcus activated the holographic display, showing footage from the rescue operation. Veltar working in hard vacuum, using his natural abilities in ways his species had never considered. Zixla channeling energy through her crystalline form to fine-tune equipment. The twins building connections in three-dimensional space with inhuman grace. Each of you discovered capabilities you didn't know you had, but more importantly, you learned to combine those capabilities with others to achieve something none of you could do alone. Is that what makes humans special? Asked Zixla. This ability to work together? Not exactly, Marcus replied. Many species cooperate effectively. What makes humans different is that we refuse to accept that someone has to die just because the math doesn't work out in their favor. He changed the display to show the technical schematics of their emergency space habitats. According to every engineering manual in the galaxy, what we built was impossible. The power requirements were too high, the structural stresses too great, the time constraints too limiting. But we did it anyway, observed Dex, his lights flickering with remembered excitement. You did it anyway because you stopped thinking about why it couldn't work and started thinking about how it might work. That's the most human thing anyone can do. Admiral Zexitar entered the briefing room, his four arms carrying official documents. Commander Chen, I have the cadets' final assignment orders. The Admiral handed out the sealed packets, each containing a cadet's first posting after graduation. As they opened them, their expressions showed a mixture of excitement and nervousness. Veltar, the Admiral announced, you're assigned to the Frontier Defense Corps. Your mission will be protecting civilian settlements on newly colonized worlds. The big Draknari's scales shifted to pleased orange. Thank you, Admiral. I promise to honor the training I've received here. Zixla, you're going to the Engineering Corps. Your specialty will be emergency infrastructure development. The crystalline alien's glow brightened. I look forward to building things that help people. Rix and Dex, you're assigned to Search and Rescue Command. Your mission will be finding and recovering people in hostile environments. The twins' bioluminescent patterns synchronized in joy. We'll bring them home, they said in unison. As each cadet received their assignment, Marcus noticed a pattern. None of them were being sent to traditional combat units. Instead, they were all assigned to roles that focused on protecting and helping civilians. Admiral, Marcus said quietly, these assignments seem specifically chosen. They are, Admiral Zextar replied. After reviewing their performance during the rescue operation, High Command decided these cadets represent a new kind of military thinking. They're being assigned to positions where they can develop and teach these methods to others. You're making them teachers? We're making them leaders. The galaxy needs officers who think like humans but fight like their own species. One of the cadets, a young Altarian who had barely spoken during the training program, raised her hand. Commander Chen, will we see you again? Marcus smiled. You'll see human methods everywhere you go from now on. Every time you choose the difficult solution over the easy one, every time you refuse to accept that someone has to die, every time you work together to do something impossible, you'll be thinking like humans. But will we see you specifically? Veltar asked. I'm being reassigned too, Marcus admitted. Fleet Command wants me to establish similar training programs at other academies. To teach aliens to think like humans? Asked Zixla. To teach everyone to think like the best of themselves. The briefing room fell quiet as the cadets processed this information. These young aliens, who had started as arrogant elites convinced of their own superiority, were now something different. Soldiers who understood that strength came not from dominating others, but from lifting them up. "Commander," Veltar said finally, "there's something we want you to know." "What's that?" "When we first met you, we thought humans were weak because you needed help to be strong. Now we understand that humans are strong because you help others be strong." Marcus felt the familiar tightness in his chest that came when something mattered more than words could express. That might be the most accurate description of humanity I've ever heard. As the cadets filed out of the briefing room for the last time, each of them stopped to shake Marcus's hand. They spoke in their own languages, but the universal translators carried their meaning clearly: gratitude, respect, and promises to honor what they had learned. Veltar was the last to leave. The big Draknari paused at the door, his scales shifting through several colors before settling on the deep purple that indicated profound thought. "Commander, I have one more question." "What is it?" "That first day when we challenged you and mocked humans as weak, did you know how it would end?" Marcus considered the question carefully. "I knew you weren't bad soldiers. I knew you weren't stupid. I knew that underneath all the arrogance and prejudice, you actually cared about doing the right thing. So you knew we'd change? I knew you'd have the chance to change. Whether you took it was up to you." Veltar's scales brightened to the golden color that indicated joy among his species. "Thank you for giving us that chance." After the last cadet left, Marcus remained in the empty briefing room, looking at the holographic display that still showed images from the rescue operation. Thousands of faces, people of dozens of species who were alive because a group of young aliens had learned to think like humans. His comm unit chimed with an incoming message. The display showed a familiar face, Elena Vasquez, the 16-year-old passenger from the Harmony's Dream. "Commander Chen," her recorded message began, "I wanted you to know that my little brother Miguel started attending the Junior Academy prep program. When they asked him why he wanted to be a soldier, he said he wanted to learn to build cities in space to help people." Marcus smiled. He also said he wants to learn to think like a human. The message ended, leaving Marcus alone with the understanding that sometimes the most important victories weren't won through superior firepower or advanced technology. Sometimes they were won by teaching others that impossible was just another word for difficult, and that the best strength came from helping others find their own. Outside the Academy's crystal walls, 3 suns set over an alien world, painting the sky in colors that human eyes were never meant to see. But in the briefing room where everything had started, Marcus Chen understood that the most beautiful thing in the galaxy wasn't the view. It was the hope that tomorrow, somewhere in the vast darkness of space, young soldiers from dozens of different worlds would face the impossible and ask themselves a very human question: how do we save everyone? And then they will.